All right, welcome everyone to this presentation on negotiating the job offer. So before we get started, I did want to check in with all of you. I will be using polls throughout this presentation. Um, so I wanted to just kind of get a sense of where you all are at as far as salary negotiation goes, and any potential challenges you might see to negotiating. So, what would you say is your biggest challenge in negotiating your salary and benefits at this point? So, options are I don't have enough work experience to warrant asking for more money. I don't know how to negotiate. I'm worried the employer will be upset if I negotiate. I'm concerned that asking for more money will make it seem like I'm not a team player. Or for some of you, maybe you're not really facing any challenges to negotiating at this point, but you're just here kind of wanting more information about that process. All right, so take another second and we'll kind of see where we are at. All right, so let's take a look at results. So, almost half of us said that our biggest challenge to negotiating is just not knowing how. And that's great because that's exactly what we're going to be talking about today. So, my hope is that once you have more information about what that process can look like, that you will consider negotiating, when the opportunity arises. Some of us also said, I just don't have enough work experience to warrant asking for more money. And that is a real concern for a lot of people. But I will say that when you receive a job offer, the employer has decided that you have all the qualifications that are needed because they are offering you the job. So off there, you must have done something to qualify for the job, and oftentimes you can use those same things to then negotiate for a higher salary. So we'll talk about that a little bit more as we go through today. Also, being worried that the employer will be upset if you negotiate. That is a real cause for concern for some people. And to that, I will say, while it is something that's important to think about, as long as you're negotiating respectfully, um, this is a very common practice. And if an employer is bothered by the fact that you tried to negotiate your salary, I personally might see that as a red flag as far as, is this the type of work environment that I want to be in if an employer is going to be really that bothered by me trying to advocate for myself. Again, as long as it's done, appropriately and respectfully. So we'll talk more about all of these things as we go through. But I would say that if you are really worried about how the employer will respond, one, it's a very standard practice to negotiate your salary, and two, if they do have, a problem with that, it might be an opportunity for you to look at, is this going to be the place where you see yourself wanting to work and being supported in that work environment? All right, so I just did a lot of talking. I'm going to go ahead and get the PowerPoint started. So now that we talked about some challenges to negotiating, let's talk about why you should maybe consider negotiating. At the end of the day, it's your choice, but some good things to think about. The first is that employers are often expecting you to negotiate. So it is fairly common for an employer to offer you a lower salary than they are able to give you, and even than they have budgeted for the position, because they're expecting that negotiation to take place and they want to leave themselves some room to be able to meet your salary request or at least move up a bit. I have a friend who used to work as a recruiter for HBO, and she told me that whenever she made a job offer, she offered the candidate less than she was able to give them because she wanted to leave some room there for the negotiation process. So oftentimes, just by asking if there's any flexibility on the salary, you could potentially walk away with more money than you were initially offered. Also, your current salary can have a major impact on your future earning potential because you can use your salary as a negotiation point in future negotiations. So whenever you are, moving into a new role, that can be used as a point of negotiation. So it's important to think beyond just that first job because that first salary can actually have more of a long-term impact. And then last but not least, negotiating shows the employer that you know your value. And one of the things that you've just done in an interview is communicate your value to the employer. So really think of this as just sort of extending that process, right? You're communicating your value to them again, but in kind of a slightly different way when it's focused more on your compensation. So all of that is great and good information, but also there are some considerations that I think are good to, just give some thought to. So as we discussed already, some employers may potentially find salary negotiation off-putting. And there have been instances out there where someone tried to negotiate their salary and an offer was rescinded. I don't think that that is a common occurrence by any means, but it can happen. So it is a possibility. But again, giving thought to what does that say about the employer? And is this a place where you see yourself really wanting to work? Also, I think it's important to identify some gender and racial or ethnic pay gaps. So not necessarily to convince you of that you should negotiate or shouldn't, but I think it's just helpful to have some of that context. So in an internal report from HP, it revealed that women tend to apply for a job only when they meet 100% of the qualifications, while men apply when they meet 60% of the qualifications. So even before we're talking about negotiating your salary, just the process of applying for jobs. So for any ladies out there, if you think you can do the job, I would highly encourage you to apply. Statistically speaking, chances are good that a less qualified male is applying for the same job. So why not go ahead and apply? Some studies also show that while more than 50% of men negotiate an employer's initial salary offer, less than 10% of women do. We won't go into all the reasons why that might be the case, but I think just a good reminder again for the ladies out there to consider negotiating because if you don't ask for more money, you're probably not going to get it. So women working full time are currently paid 84 cents for every dollar earned by a man. So this number, tends to improve slightly, I think, as the years go on, but obviously still not where we would like it to be. And then if we look at transgender men and non-binary workers, they are paid 70 cents for every dollar earned by the typical worker, and transgender women are paid 60 cents for every dollar. So definitely quite a gap there. So the goal, obviously, at the end of the day is that everyone would be getting equal pay for equal work. But unfortunately, we're not quite there yet. And then lastly, a study by the company Truesaic found that people of color earned $61 billion less than their white counterparts in 2020. So again, just some kind of food for thought when you're looking at your individual situation and deciding, if you want to negotiate, if you want to apply for a job, looking at what might be holding you back, and you can kind of make those decisions from there. Because at the end of the day, it is your decision whether or not to negotiate. All right. So now that we talked about some of the reasons you may want to consider negotiating, let's talk about how to do it. So there's really six main steps. So in all honesty, there's actually seven, and the seventh one is practice, but these first six are really more in the kind of research, strategizing, all of that. But I will say the more you practice, the easier this gets, just like anything in life. The more you practice interviewing, the more comfortable you feel. So definitely think about practice as a part of this process. But for the six kind of, I guess I'll say essential steps. Number one is doing your research. So figuring out what is the market value of the position you're applying to, what is going to be kind of a reasonable salary to expect. Number two is determining your target salary. Your target salary is the number that you want to walk away with. So if you get your target salary, you are happy. You're then going to identify a target salary range. So rather than it providing the employer with one specific number like $80,000, you're actually going to provide them with a range that you would be comfortable with. And that makes it more likely that you'll walk away with the number that you want. You also want to determine a walkaway point. The walkaway point is the lowest salary that you are willing to accept. And if they don't meet that salary, you're going to turn down the job. So it's important to know what that is in advance so you're not inadvertently accepting a job that's just not going to work for you salary-wise. Five is assessing the value of benefits. Benefits can play a huge role in your overall compensation package, so it's really important to take that into consideration. And then lastly, preparing your strategy. What is it that you're going to say? What are your talking points? What are you going to use as data for why you are worth the amount that you're asking for? All right. And then once you do all of this, again, practicing is always helpful. Okay, so let's talk about doing your research. So there are different places where you can get research or get information on salaries. The one that we typically utilize is salary.com. This website is not perfect. It does have a lot of ads sometimes, but it still does have helpful data. So with salary.com, you enter the position title for the role that you are applying for or interviewing for, and then you enter your location. So in this example, I used human resources assistant as the role that I was applying for. So you're going to see different possibilities for most jobs, and you want to find the one that is the closest to what you're applying for and the closest to your experience level. So here we can see, there's a human resources assistant 1 and then a level 2. So let's say that you have around a year of experience from internships or part-time jobs that you've had that kind of, related in some way to what you would be doing in this position that you're interviewing for. So let's say that the human resources assistant 2 level is going to be the closest to what you're applying for. So you just want to read through and make sure that you're picking the one that is the most similar to the one that you're applying for. Keep in mind that salary.com is not going to have every single job title out there. So sometimes you will have to kind of pick the closest thing to what you're looking for. But in this example, we're going to move forward with the human resources assistant 2. Okay, so now we are going to use the data that we find to determine our target salary. So it's going to present the data as a bell curve that you see here. So the number that we want to pay the most attention to is that median number. So for people working as human resources assistant level 2s in Long Beach, California, the typical salary is around $57,000. So that's the number that we kind of want to use as our main point when considering our target salary. So we may want to move up or down from that number a little bit in determining our target salary, depending on how well qualified we are for the job. If we have more experience really than is required for the job, maybe we're going to move up a little bit. If we have less experience, right, we're on the lower end, maybe we're going to move down a little bit. But we're not going to take huge jumps. We're not going to jump from the 50th percentile up to the 75th. That's a pretty big jump. But I might move from 57,000 to maybe 58, right? Maybe 59, maybe 60, but I'm not going to jump all the way to 65,000. Unless I have other reasons for doing so, other info that this company tends to compensate, a little bit better than other companies. Usually you want to stick pretty close to that median number as your target salary. And of course, you want to look at factors like your budget and, all of that. But at the end of the day, the employer is going to compensate you based on typically the market value for the position. They're not going to compensate you based on your financial need. So knowing your budget and your financial need is important, but it doesn't necessarily impact the number that you're asking for substantially. Okay, so we're going to, again, use this to determine that target salary. And the target salary is the number we want. So if we walk away with that number, we're going to be happy, right? This is what we have, through our research, determined is a good number. So then our next step is identifying our target salary range. You never want to just give the employer your target salary because the employer is then going to try to negotiate down. So if based on this example, we say that 57,000 is our target salary, if we ask for that, the employer is probably going to go down from there, and it's less likely that we walk away with the number that we want. If we instead provide a range, we're showing flexibility, right? So we're saying, oh, I was hoping for something in the range of, and we're going to place our target salary at the bottom of the range. So if we say, I was hoping for something in the range of $57,000 to $60,000, right? Or $57,000 to $62,000, somewhere in there. It's more likely that we'll actually walk away with the 57. Some people tend to think like, oh, if 57 is what I want, I should put it maybe in the middle of my range. But then again, they're going to try to go below that. So if you put the number you want as the lowest number in that range, it makes it more likely that you'll walk away with that number. When determining the upper limit of your range, you want to extend upwards by no more than 20%. So 20% would be the maximum that you would want to move up. So usually I say somewhere between 10 and 20% is a good number. So hopefully that all makes sense. Um, let's see what we're thinking when it comes to ranges. So if your target salary is 70,000, which of the following do you think is going to be the best range? And I'm going to launch a poll. Okay. So if the target salary is 70,000, which of the following do you think is the best range? Is it going to be 65 to 75, 70 to 80, 70 to 90, or 75 to 85,000? And all these polls are anonymous, and this is new information for most of us. So just take your best guess, and we'll kind of talk through each of these options. Okay, so let's take a look. Okay, so choices A and C are tied for what we think the best range is. And then next is B, 70 to 80, and D is 75 to 85. So let's talk through each one of these options. Okay, so a large percentage of us said that A, 65 to 75 would be a good range. So this is not going to be the best range because the range starts below the target salary. So remember, we want to take our target salary and put that at the bottom of the range because it's more likely to walk away with that number. If we give them 65 to 75, it's more likely we'll walk away with 65. They want to go towards the lowest number. So that's why we're going to take the number we want, put that at the bottom of the range, and then extend upwards from there. Okay, so then we get to B, which is 70 to 80,000. This is actually a good range. We have our target salary at the bottom of the range, and we're extending upwards by no more than 20%. So it's a $10,000 range, which for this kind of level of money that we're talking about makes sense. If we go to option C, the problem here is that the range is too big. It's more than 20%. So if based on our research, 70,000 is a fair salary for this job, and this is the number that we want, going from 70 to 90, like that is a huge jump. It's very, very unlikely that we're going to get $90,000 for a job where 70,000 is the market value. So if we give them too big a range, it just makes it seem a little unrealistic, or maybe like you're not as well informed, like you just don't have the most realistic expectations. So that's why you do want to keep that range like at that 20% or below level. And then for option D, the problem with this is that the range starts above the target salary. And it's kind of the same concern as choice C. If we've determined that 70,000 is the market value, that's a fair wage for this role in this, our location, starting at 75 again might make us seem a little unrealistic. The employer is probably not going to be able to meet us there as realistically. So again, when determining that target salary range, we want to take the target salary, put it at the bottom of the range, and extend upwards by no more than 20%. All right. Hopefully all of this is making sense. So this is just kind of an FYI. So this says new California law, but this is actually back from 2022, so it's not as new anymore. So positions from companies within the state of California that have 15 or more employees are required to list salary ranges for all job postings, which is great, right? The more information we have as job seekers, the better, the more transparency, the better. But this does not necessarily apply to positions outside the state of California and does not apply to small companies that have fewer than 15 employees. So just kind of an FYI. So hopefully if you are looking for jobs in California, you are seeing those posted salary ranges. All right. So the next step when you are kind of preparing to negotiate is determine your walkaway point. So again, this is the lowest salary that you are willing to accept. And if the employer is not able to provide you with that salary, you would turn down the job. So some things to consider when determining your walkaway point. Number one is available benefits. You want to think about like what value, do the benefits hold? Because sometimes it can be a substantial part of the job offer. So it's really good to like look at the full package when you are determining what that walk away point will be. I mean, it's good to determine the walk away point in advance, but when you're thinking about that, if it's a company that you happen to know doesn't offer health benefits or whatever it might be, and that's an additional cost you're going to incur, that you would want to factor that into what that walk away point would be. Some other factors, how long you've been looking for a job. If you are just starting out, maybe, your walkaway point is going to be higher than if you've been looking for a job for 8 months, right? So we tend to get less choosy as time goes on. And that's good because we're adapting, right? We're kind of seeing where we're at. But also the job market. If it's a really tough job market, you might have a lower walkaway point than if the job market is great and you're able to, find lots of opportunities. It's also important to think about the experience you will get. So maybe you're accepting a position with a lower salary, but it's with a company that, having that on your resume is really going to open doors for you. Or maybe you're going to get a lot of great training in the opportunity that will help you down the road. So just thinking about like, what is the value of this experience? Am I willing to take a lower salary because of how this could positively impact my career in the long run? And then lastly, opportunities for promotion. Maybe you're being hired for a lower level position where the salary is not what you would hope. However, there's an opportunity for promotion within a short period of time. So maybe, you can ask about like kind of what's the typical, length of time that people are in this role, and maybe, after 6 months, then you would be eligible to potentially move into a higher level role with higher pay. So just all things to be thinking about because you don't want to be too black and white when it comes to salary negotiation because there's so many nuances, right? So this again, the salary might be not as high as you would hope, but there might be other factors that could still make the job offer worthwhile. So in determining that walk away point where, again, if they don't reach that number, you're going to turn down the job, you want to be looking at the bigger picture. So we're going to talk a little bit in a little bit more detail about benefits. So I think the most common benefit that we think of is health insurance, but also things like dental or vision insurance, life or disability insurance, things like vacation time, right? Sick leave. But also there are things that are, might just help as far as the flexibility that it would bring to your life. So flexible work hours. Are you able to work early and get out early? Maybe, for people who have kids, this can be huge, right? Because maybe you can pick your kids up after school. So what freedom does that flexibility give you if that's an option for this job? Telecommuting options. Are you in person, 5 days a week? Are you fully remote? Is it a hybrid schedule? How, if it is hybrid or remote, how much money does that save you as far as wear and tear on your car and gas and all of those kinds of things? Also thinking about things like retirement plans or tuition assistance. If you know you want to go to graduate school and the company would help pay for that, right? That could be a huge incentive. Also things like stock options or even like professional development. So this could be either attending conferences, it could be maybe if there's like an exam that you have to take in your field, if the company would pay for you to take the exam or pay for like a training um, to help you prepare. So different things like that. So trying to kind of look again at the big picture and um, evaluate the overall job offer beyond just the salary. So I will say with benefits, it kind of depends sometimes where, like who the employer is, how creative you can get. So, as an employee here at Cal State Long Beach, things are very by the book, right? It's a large institution. There's a lot of rules and regulations and policies and things. So the benefits pretty much are the benefits. So I can't negotiate for more vacation time. I mean, I can ask, but my vacation time is basically determined by the amount of years of service that I have. So the longer I work here, the more vacation time I get, and there's like a strict formula they follow. So I don't have a lot of flexibility in that area. Whereas if you're applying with a small company or like a startup or something like that, they might have more flexibility in those areas. I have a friend who got a job and the job was fully remote, and this was before COVID. So this is before it was common to have more remote work. And she's an extrovert and she feels like she does her best work around other people. So she negotiated for her company to pay for a co-working space, like 2 days a week, I think, for her to go in and work in this co-working space. And her argument was that she feels she's able to do her best work around other people. And so she said, this is something that will enable me to really be my best in this role. And they covered it. So, if there's something that you can argue would help you to be more successful in your role, you can add that into kind of the overall benefits and something that you might want to negotiate for. So this is coming from salary.com, and I think it's just a good reminder of what a difference benefits make with the overall compensation package. So here we're looking again at human resources assistant two positions, and this is sort of an average as far as what they're providing for benefits. So with this, if you see over on the right-hand side of the page, it says industry, and then you can choose, actually, there's a drop down. So I selected hospitality and leisure, but you can choose whatever industry you would be working in. So for this, it's a human resources role, but you can do that. You can work in HR within a variety of industries. So let's say you're doing it for a hotel, like, Hilton. So hospitality and leisure would be the industry that you're working within. And you can see the average industry cost. So for this level of position, on a yearly basis, they're spending $6,500 for your healthcare, right? They're spending, over $4,600 for Social Security. So those are all being added on to that initial salary of 59,921. So you can see the overall compensation package on average for this kind of role in this industry would actually be closer to $86,648. So just things to kind of think about, again, looking at the job offer a little bit more holistically. Again, if you have questions as we go through, feel free to type them in the chat. I am more than happy to stop and answer whatever questions you have. Okay, I see a raised hand. Denise?
Yes, I had a question. I mean, you did explain about the holistic effect of how much the employer is providing, and you did highlight that it was like the social security, like goes back, but that's part of every business that needs to have. You either, if you're a contract, and then you put it towards your social security, but every business is supposed to contribute to the social security, right?
Yeah, so it's not so much that that's like a perk of a job, it's just a component of your overall compensation. So the graph on that page is just kind of showing you like when you're getting a job offer of 59,000 in this industry, this is actually how much the employer is paying for you as an employee. So what they're paying actually goes beyond the 59,000 because of the benefits part of it. So it's more just kind of helping you to look at sort of that bigger picture.
Okay, so what would you suggest me as an employee? Like, what would I look more versus what the business is supposed to be following per the law? I mean, they're supposed to pay forward to that social, but say some businesses are doing healthcare for their employees and others are not, then those are the things that I would take into account, right?
Right. And it's going to depend on what benefits are most important for you. So let's say, like for example, like let's say you are, a single person and you're looking at a job that for whatever reason doesn't offer healthcare benefits. And you would then need to look at how much is it going to cost for me to purchase my own healthcare? What does this look like overall versus let's say you have a family and you have to provide healthcare for your entire family. That like you might not, it might not be worth it for you to take that job because then you're having to pay for healthcare for your whole family. So it just depends on you as an individual and what benefits are going to be most important to you when you're evaluating a job offer. For one person, like tuition reimbursement might be really important because they know they want to go to grad school, and whether or not that's part of what a company offers could be a big factor for them. So it's really just about looking at your individual situation and what difference different benefits would make. And again, looking at that in comparison to like the salary, right? So some companies, maybe it's a higher salary, but the benefits aren't as great. other companies, it could be a lower salary, but the benefits are really strong. And it's just going to depend on kind of like what your individual needs are, what is going to make the biggest difference for you.
Okay, got it. So you would say if there are benefits with that salary that doesn't look so much within your range, you can add up your benefits that they're providing versus that salary that is higher, but there's no really benefits.
Exactly. Yeah. So
Okay,
it's just going to depend, like, at the end of the day, like, what is most important for you.
gotcha. Thank you.
You're welcome. Jacqueline, you had a question as well?
Hi, yes, I did. So, kind of reflecting on what you were saying in regards to think of the other things that they could offer. As you mentioned, I'm just gonna pull an example like vacation time. There's
Mhm.
some companies that want to sell you like, yeah, you're going to be able to bank in and having vacation, but then once you're in the grip of the job and you want to take vacation, sometimes, for example, my previous job, I would need to accrue probably a year's worth of me working in order for me to at least get a week of vacation. So if that's something that's important to me to have like flexibility of time to kind of have the work-life balance, how would I know if the company is offering a well-rounded negotiation packet that includes a somewhat good vacation like perk?
Mhm. So I think there's a couple of ways. So one approach would be to um, really like talk with HR, like after you've been offered the role, and ask you like your specific questions about, can you explain to me like what the what vacation time would be involved, right, with this position. So one would be talking to HR and seeing what information you can get there. The other avenue is trying to talk to people who work for that company, not necessarily in HR, but just people, employees, to kind of get a sense of, you know, what the company offers, what their benefits are. So essentially with that, you would be doing more of like an informational interview. And for anybody not familiar with that term, an informational interview is basically just a fancy term for asking somebody about their job. So if you were to like you happen to know somebody already working there, or maybe you find people, somebody on LinkedIn, and just kind of reach out to them. And you're never going to ask the person directly about how much money they make, what their specific benefits are, but asking in a general sense of like, oh, like, kind of as you're researching the company, like maybe you ask questions also about the company culture, right? You're just trying to learn about the company to see if it's going to be a good fit for you, but also ask like, how would you say this company is as far as benefits go? Right. And just kind of ask in general ways. So I would say those are kind of the two ways that I've seen of trying to get that information, because it's not always, um, you don't always know exactly in advance what the benefits are fully. So for example, any most jobs are going to say like, oh, we provide healthcare, but there's all different levels of healthcare benefits. So I can tell you, like in my role, here at Cal State Long Beach, I'm technically an employee of the state of California. And so because of that, we have really good benefits, like when it comes to healthcare benefits. So I mean, like simple things like I have a friend, who works for a different kind of organization. And so, we were talking about like we each are parents. And so like, what the hospital bill was when we had our babies. And for me, I didn't have to pay anything. Like I literally paid $0. And that's just because I have really good health benefits. She also has good health benefits, but I think she had to pay like $500, right? And like that's the granular stuff that there's not really a way of knowing exactly in advance. But if you are like if the benefits are something that have come up in the past where now you're saying like I didn't have a great experience in a previous role. I'm really curious about the benefits at this new company. Maybe you do want to take the time to try to reach out to a couple of people working at that organization just to get more info about the company in general. Again, what they like about working there, company culture, those kind of things. But you could also generally ask about benefits and if they feel like the company has strong benefits. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome. Okay. Uh, let's see. Could you ask the employer how does one go about requesting vacation time? Yeah, I think that that would be fine to ask. I think I would wait, though, just to be clear, until you've received a job offer, right? And so, I wouldn't ask that during the interview process before they've extended the offer. You know, if they're like, interviewing for the job, I'm like, oh, do you have any questions? You're like, oh, how do you request vacation time? Right? You're kind of jumping ahead a little bit. But I think once you have received a job offer and you're having a conversation about the role and about salary and benefits and all of that, yeah, I don't think there's any problem with just asking like, how do you request vacation time, or what does the process look like of getting vacation approved? So I think that would be fine to ask as well. Um, and Natasha said, I think it's in the job offer package. Sometimes, I've just learned that different companies have different levels of specificity when it comes to the job offer. So like with mine, I think I'm trying to think like if I don't know that it had the rates because like again in my role it's very specific like you earn I think you start earning 6.66 hours of vacation time a month and so you have to work for at least 2 months to accrue like 1 day of vacation because 1 day is 8 hours. It's like this whole formula. So some employers are going to share all the info up front and others not as much, so sometimes you do have to ask more directly to get some of that information. Okay, so let's talk for a minute. I'm still happy to answer more questions, but let's talk for a minute about preparing your negotiation strategy. So, the number one thing you want to think about is that you don't want to discuss salary until after a job offer has been made. So you don't want to bring salary up during the interview process, or if the employer brings it up, you want to try to delay that conversation. The reason for that is that an employer is going to be more willing to negotiate with you once they've decided that you are the person they want to hire. Right? Once they've done all the work of interviewing people and they've decided that you are their top candidate, they want to hire you, they're going to be more willing to negotiate with you because they don't want to lose you, right? If you're their number one candidate. If you start talking about salary earlier on in the interview process, they haven't made a decision yet, and maybe you want more than they want to pay, that could be a factor when they're deciding who they want to hire. So overall, it is better to not bring that up. And if an employer brings it up, we'll kind of try to delay that conversation. And we'll actually talk about that, I think, in the next slide, ways of doing that. Throughout the negotiation, it is better to let the employer speak first. So ideally, you would let the employer make you an offer and you would respond to the offer, rather than you starting out by asking, I'd like that, this amount, and having the employer respond. So generally speaking, if you can let the employer make that initial offer. It is also a great practice to ask for time to think about the offer before responding. So they make you an offer, you say, thank you so much. I'm really excited about this. I'd like to spend some time thinking it over. When do you need a response from me? And then you can decide, do you want to negotiate? Maybe the offer they made you is already at your target salary and you're happy and you just want to accept it. That's great, but give yourself the time to think about it. Or if it's below your target salary and you want to spend that time preparing a negotiation strategy, asking for that time is really helpful. And that's also time where you could think about those specific questions. If you have specific questions about how do I request vacation or that kind of thing, it gives you time to kind of collect your thoughts with those things. Also, just a reminder, it's always a decision. Like, do you want to negotiate? You do not have to. Generally speaking, we would encourage you to at least think about it. But at the end of the day, like you want to think about for you, whatever that might be, the pros and cons, when making that choice. Just a reminder to always provide a salary range rather than a specific number. And you always want to provide data to support your request. So there's really two types of data that you're going to use. Number one is your qualifications. We know you're qualified for the role because they've offered you the job, right? So we know that you're qualified. Remind them of what those qualifications are. Remind them of why you are the person that they want to hire. So think back to, what did you tell them in the interview? Like, what are kind of the key points that make you a strong candidate? And remind them of that. And that's why you're worth the amount that you're asking for. So again, for those of you that said, I don't think I have enough work experience to make sense negotiating my salary, I totally get that. I felt the exact same way, when I was first looking for jobs. But you must have some experience or something valuable to bring, or they wouldn't have decided to hire you. The other type of data is salary data. So again, from your research of like the market value of a position, what is standard for a given position in a given area. Keep in mind that some employers are going to lag behind, the market value, and some will be ahead of it. So some companies tend to offer better salaries than others. But generally speaking, you can use that data to support what you're asking for. Also, it is always a good habit to anticipate resistance. So you can come up with all these lovely talking points to negotiate your salary, but if you're expecting that employer is just going to say, "Oh, yes, here's more money," that's probably not very realistic. So trying to anticipate that resistance and get a little bit more comfortable with it, which I know is easier said than done, is going to make it an easier process for you. And then last but not least, you want to ask for the offer in writing before accepting the position. It's always a good practice to really be able to look it over, make sure that, whatever that was agreed to when you were speaking, is actually what is then on paper. All right. So as I mentioned, it is to your advantage to share salary expectations after a job offer has been made. So let's say that employer asks you to share your expectations earlier than that. Which of the following do you think would be an appropriate response in trying to delay that conversation? So I'm going to launch another poll. All right. So do you think that an appropriate response would be saying, "I'll be able to answer that more effectively once I have a better understanding of the role"? B would be, "I'm confident that we'll agree on a number that's in line with my qualifications and the market value for the position." C is, "What's the typical salary range for this sort of position?" So turning it around and asking the employer. Or D would be all of the above. Okay, I'll give it just another minute to give everybody a chance to respond. Okay. Okay, so half of us thought that B, "I'm confident we'll agree on a number that's in line with my qualifications and the market value for this position," was the best answer. Some people thought A, and then we had a couple of people that said C and D. So technically, the answer is D. Any of these could be appropriate to use. So I think it really comes down to what you feel most comfortable with. So I will say that for myself, I probably would use A most often. Because if they're asking you for this information early on in the process, saying like, "I'll be able to answer that question more effectively once I have a better understanding of the role," it's kind of hard for them to argue with that, right? You're saying, "I don't have the information I need yet to be able to answer that." However, maybe you are further along in the process and you do have a good understanding of the role, but they still haven't offered you the job. That option probably isn't going to be the best at that point. So any of these really would be okay. It is okay to turn it back on them and just say, "Well, what's the typical salary range for this sort of position?" So I think whatever you feel comfortable with. I'd say for myself, I probably would rely on A and B most often, just as far as like what feels most natural to me. But any of these would be appropriate choices. Okay, we are now going to go through a couple of sample negotiations. So these give you an idea of what negotiations could sound like. And so the goal really is just to provide you with different language you could use, but also kind of help you think through how a negotiation might go. So, all right. So the initial offer is for $65,000 per year, and the target salary is 72,000, right? So definitely the offer is below the target salary. So I'm wondering if someone would be willing to unmute themselves and read the part of the employer for me. If you would be so willing, it just makes it more interesting for you all because then you're not just hearing my voice the entire time. If you'd be so willing, if you would raise your hand. And if not, that's okay. I can read both parts, but if someone would be willing, let me know. Okay, I see a couple of hands. So for this one, I'm going to call on Adriana. So Adriana, if you would be willing to play the part of the employer, that would be fantastic. So I'm going to go ahead and start. I'll read the first part and then you'll read the part where it says employer. So I will say, I've reflected on your offer and I'm excited about the possibility of joining your team. Given my qualifications and work experience, I'm wondering if you have any flexibility on the salary. So I would say this is my favorite way of opening the conversation, right? It's very light. It's just saying, I'm wondering if you have any flexibility. So then Adriana, as the employer, responds,
Well, I could go as high as 68,000.
okay, so this is good news, right? Because we just got $3,000 more dollars, but we haven't yet reached our target salary, right? Because our target salary is 72,000. So what do you all think? Sorry, I'm trying to find my poll. There we go. Okay, so how do you think I should respond, right? So she just gave me $3,000 more dollars, but I'm not yet at my target salary. So do you think I should keep negotiating, or do you think I should accept the amount and turn the conversation to benefits? Again, no right or wrong answer with any of this. It's really just about kind of figuring out what seems most natural for you. Okay, so most of us said I should keep negotiating. So good news for you is that's what I'm going to do. If for nothing else, then to just show you what that could sound like. So I then say, I appreciate your flexibility. Based on my research of similar positions in this area, I was thinking $72,000 to $80,000 per year would be fair. So something to pay attention to here. I start by saying, I appreciate your flexibility. I'm acknowledging the fact that she just gave me more money, right? So whenever you can show appreciation throughout this process is helpful because this is a conversation between two humans, right? So anything you can do to show them that you are flexible, that you're appreciative goes a long way. So this is where I'm also going to use data. I'm saying based on my research of similar positions in this area. So I've researched the market value of the position. And this is where I'm going to pull out my range, right? I'm not just asking for that 72,000. I'm saying I was thinking 72 to $80,000 per year would be fair. All right. So then Adriana responds,
That's really stretching our budget for this.
okay, so I'm getting some pushback. How do you all think I should respond? Should I keep negotiating, or since I'm getting some pushback now, should I accept the offer that was given? All right, I'll get another second. Okay. So the majority of us think that I should keep negotiating for a higher salary. Sorry, I forgot to share results. So most of us said keep negotiating. So I am going to go ahead and do that. So I say, I completely understand that. So again, like validating what you're saying, that's really stretching our budget for this. And I will say, like, she may be honest. Oftentimes, the person that you are negotiating with is not necessarily the person that is setting the budget. They're not like the CEO of the company, right? They may be given a specific budget for the role. So she's probably being honest and saying that's really stretching our budget for this. So I say I completely understand that. However, given my experience increasing revenue by 15% in my current position, and my experience with reducing expenses, I hope we can work together to come to a salary that reflects my qualifications. Excuse me. So now I'm basically citing my qualifications for the role. Earlier on, I used, my research of salaries for that kind of role, and now I'm turning to my own qualifications. All right. So then she responds,
72,000 is the best I can do.
which is fantastic because we just reached our target salary. So this is like the ideal salary negotiation, right? But we still had to kind of keep pushing. And we're all going to have different tolerance levels. Some of us might have just, accepted the 68,000 and said, thank you so much. And that's fine. It's really about what you are comfortable with. So then I say, thank you. Would you send me the offer in writing so that I can review everything? And when do you need my answer? All right. So now let's move on to our second negotiation. So I think earlier on I saw one other hand who'd be willing to read. Is that person still willing? If you want to raise your hand again. Denise, perfect. Thank you. Okay, so here we have sample negotiation 2. So this one is going to start off with the employer. So Denise, if you want to go ahead and read.
Okay. I'd like to offer you the position of social media coordinator. Can you share your salary expectations?
Okay, so at this point, she's asking me to share my salary expectations. I would prefer her to make me an offer initially, right? It's always better to let the employer go first. So then I say, thank you so much for this opportunity. I would appreciate it if you made me an offer based on what you have budgeted for the position. So this is a way if the employer doesn't give you a number that you can try and see if they'll give you a number. So again, that's really based on your comfort level. But ideally, the employer is gonna provide that number first. So then she responds,
I'd really like to know what kind of salary you're looking for.
okay, so now I have to make a decision, right? How do you think I should respond at this point? Do you think I should still try to get the employer to say a number first? Or at this point, should I go ahead and share my target salary range? All right, I'll give it just another minute for that. Okay, so the majority of us said I should share my target salary range. Again, there's no right or wrong answer to any of these. But at this point, I think I would share my target salary range because we haven't even gotten to numbers yet, and I don't necessarily want to get in this back and forth of like, you tell me first. No, you tell me first. So I did try to get the employer to make an initial offer, but it didn't really work. So at this point, if it were me, I think I would go ahead and share my target salary range. So I say, well, based on my research of similar positions in the area, I think something in the range of $60,000 to $68,000 would be fair. All right, and so then the employer responds,
I don't think we can do anything higher than 56,000.
okay, so now I am getting some pushback. So, I could just say 56,000, right? I'll go ahead and take that, or I could keep negotiating. So in this example, I'm going to keep negotiating. So I say that seems a bit low based on the market value for this position, and considering my experience increasing social media engagement by 20% in my internship with the Arts Council for Long Beach, I think that something in the range of $60,000 to $68,000 seems appropriate. So in this example, I'm actually using 2 types of data, right? I'm talking about the market value of the position, and then I'm also talking about my qualifications. So then the employer responds with,
I'm not going to be able to get anything higher than 58,000 approved. So that's the best I can do.
okay, so for our final poll, how do you think I should respond? Should I keep negotiating? Because I'm obviously not at my target salary yet, because my target salary is 60,000 based on the range. Or should I accept the amount offered and turn the conversation to benefits? All right, so most of us have had a chance to respond. Okay. All right, so most of us said that I should accept the amount offered and turn the conversation to benefits. Some of us did say keep negotiating for a higher salary. So in this instance, the thing that I'm paying attention to is the language. Earlier on, she said, I don't think we can do anything higher than 56,000. That to me doesn't sound super final. But then saying, I'm not going to be able to get anything higher than 58,000 approved, so that's the best I can do. That language is sounding pretty final. And so part of it is just sort of like reading the person that you're talking with, right? Like reading the language, paying attention. So if it were me in this instance, because that language is sounding pretty final, I would probably then turn the conversation to benefits. And again, the person I'm talking with may not be the one setting the budget for this role. So they may be very honest and saying, like, I can't get anything higher than 58,000 approved. So if it were me, I would say, I understand. Could you tell me about the benefits package and your company's telecommuting policy? So now I'm turning the conversation to the benefits and specifically what's important to me. I want to know about telecommuting options because that could make a difference in whether or not this position is going to be a fit for me. Even though they didn't reach my target salary, can something else make up that gap? Okay, well, thank you to my readers for participating. So we are almost at time, so just some closing thoughts. So keep in mind that salary may be fixed for some positions or industries. Like you may apply for something and it says, the salary for this is 72,000 and that is the salary. Regardless who takes the role, you can negotiate all you want, but it's fixed. So just keep in mind that that may be the case. Also, unfortunately, sometimes posted salary ranges are not entirely accurate. So what I mean by that is sometimes you'll see a salary range for a position, and it might say the salary range for this position is 70 to 90,000. And you think, okay, great, I'm going to negotiate for like 85. And then in the negotiations, you find out like 75 is the best they can do. And you're like, well, why does it say it went up to, like 90? And that may be based on the classification for the position. Sometimes when they post a salary range, it's for the like whatever level that position is. So like in my role, I'm a student services professional 3. There's a certain salary range that goes with that classification, and that is often what is posted. It doesn't always mean that the specific office that you would work in has the budget to reach the top of that salary range. So it's unfortunate because then it feels a little misleading, but keep in mind that sometimes the employer may not actually be able to reach the top of whatever range is posted on the job posting. It's also good to remember that the negotiation process often takes place over the phone or via email. It's rare that this is an in-person conversation. So just something to kind of keep in mind there. And lastly, that practice is essential. Like anything, it's a skill that you build over time. And especially because it can feel kind of awkward, it's something that I think does get easier the more that you practice it. And we're happy to help you with that here in the Career Center. If you want to schedule an appointment with us for salary negotiation, we're more than happy to help you. So it is 1 o'clock and I want to be respectful of everybody's time. If you got what you needed today, thank you so much for being here. Feel free to take off. If any of you want a copy of the slides or access to the recording, I'm going to go ahead and put my email in the chat real quick, and then you can just send me an email requesting if you wanted the slides or the recording, whatever is helpful for you. Just shoot me an email and I will send that back to you. So there's my email in the chat. If anyone has additional questions, feel free to either put them in the chat or if you want to unmute yourself. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording at this point. So let me go ahead and do that.